Good Monday, everybody. Welcome to Screen Junkies Universe. I'm Dan Murrell, and we have a slew of regular hosts that are not here. Roth Cornett is away on assignment. Joe Starr is writing, and Spencer Gilbert is still a dad. So, but look at this panel that we have. Joining us today, Markeia McCarty. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. I'm looking forward to some of the topics that we're talking about today.
Have you done SJU?
Yeah, but it's been a while.
It's been a minute.
I mean, we're saying maybe a year.
Oh, well,
I've been
back.
busy.
Yeah, you are. You're a busy girl.
Nwadawe, thank you for
how's
coming,
it going?
sir.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me.
This is your first time at SJU?
No, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I did twice. We did it together. I did it once with our boy. I'm gonna feel bad for Ed. Yeah. For some reason, Edgar kept popping in my head. I was like, that's not Ed's name.
That's his proper name.
Edgar Greer.
That's
Edgar Greer.
his government name.
That's how I say Ed's name when I'm doing it really fast. Just Edgar.
And filling in our final seat here, Billy Business. Billy, this is your first time on the show.
This is my first time on SJU. Welcome, finally. I'm excited.
We've got Steven Spielberg Netflix news, the saga that continues, or perhaps is at an end. Some details about James Gunn's the Suicide Squad / Suicide Squad 2, Taika Waititi, Terry Gilliam, Time Bandits news. And before we start, though, we're going to do a full coverage on this on Charting later today, but I just, I didn't want to not mention it. Of course, the big news this weekend, Captain Marvel's opening. We're gonna do the full court press on it, but I wanted to just throw it out to you guys real quick before we dive into everything else. Estimated $153 million opening. That was at the higher edge of a lot of expectations.
Yeah.
Quick thoughts. What do you guys think about that?
I'm not surprised. I mean, just by itself, it is a very solid origin story. No spoilers with anything, but it's not just Captain Marvel's story. And then the way that it's structured, the slow burn of it, the fact that it embraces vulnerability as a strength, which is like, wow, see that in an action movie. It's like that with the sci-fi adventure, and then it's just all of the hype and everything leading up to it. And the cat alone is going to get you $100 million.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm not surprised that it blew 120 out of the water. That ended up being the conservative estimate.
Yeah. Same here. Mostly, I still have to see it today, but I think also, aside from all those dope points about the movie, you also have to know this is going to be the movie right before Endgame, the most anticipated, Avengers movie. Even the people who were mucking up BS online went to see it because they had to see that end credit. Even the people who they've sat there with that meme with the smiley face mask but the angry behind it. They've sat through it because you needed to see what happened behind those end credits.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the beauty and the kind of recipe that is Marvel movies. Is that it's kind of it's almost like the crossover events in comics where you drop a little nugget of it somewhere, and even if you're not here for the main event, there's something you want. So when it was Fear Itself, and then your favorite comic has Fear Itself, and they drop a piece of the crossover, and you're like, well, I guess I got to read this crossover to see how this wraps up.
Yeah.
And I think the nuggets at the end are well, I got to see all the Marvel movies because I can't miss a clue.
Yeah, especially this one. My God, no spoilers, but the first 20 minutes, if you're just coming in blind, good luck. There's a, it's the Kree on this planet. You're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
I do think, though, what's interesting, and maybe this isn't the right comparison. You're a numbers guy, so you can tell me if I'm way off the mark here, but it seems like now with Marvel, my worry going into this was is Marvel setting us up where it's well, if it's not Avengers, if it's not 500 characters at one time, I don't care. But what they've really been doing, which I think is cool, is they are presenting stories in these last couple origin movies. It's underrepresented. There's a female-led hero, Black Panther, and they've scored huge because it's look, if you're gonna give me another origin for another character, give me something different.
Yeah.
And I feel like Ant-Man and the Wasp, I was I've been here, I've done that. And that one didn't really perform to what we would call a Marvel standard. But you look at Black Panther and now Captain Marvel, it's okay, give me something different because we're 20 some odd movies in at this point.
Yeah.
I don't need another Iron Man, or that's what I think.
I know.
it is.
It's considering like now the next movie is going to be Endgame. Like we're at the home stretch. I do want to take like a few seconds to just remember how far we've come from. Can you imagine?
I know. It's like, what, 25 movies now?
Just with
20
you saying
some
that.
odd, yeah.
The
26 movies.
With you saying that, I remember walking into Iron Man and not knowing what to expect, and like for there now to be like a golden standard of like, oh, we know we can expect something at least kind of entertaining from this. Like, it's crazy how like, when did Iron Man come out? Like
2008.
2008.
Yeah.
I remember my friend was working on it, and I caught up with them. They're like, dude, this is a disaster. Like, this is a mess. They're just making shit up as they go along. The script is like kind of there. And then, so when I went and saw it, I was like, oh man, I'm really sorry. And then I watched it. I was like, were you like bullshitting me this whole time?
Yeah.
It was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Came out, what, 2 months before Dark Knight?
It's like a marriage now at this point. It's like we're married to Marvel.
Yeah.
It's like we gotta keep that marriage, alive.
Keep it fresh.
Gotta keep it fresh.
I know.
That's what it is.
My relationship to Marvel movies is longer than my relationship to my current wife. It's like, wow.
Well, we're going to get into my relationship with the numbers later today, but, of course, I want to throw it out there because that's the biggest story going this weekend. But let's talk about another story that may have more long-term ramifications, which is Steven Spielberg and his apparent war, or maybe not, with Netflix. I wasn't here last week, Billy, when you guys talked about this, but there were reports last week that Steven Spielberg was prepared to march up to the Academy and start a war over Netflix being eligible for Academy Awards. He didn't like the fact that they didn't respect the theatrical window. He didn't think that they should be eligible. These are all the news reports. Well, it turns out maybe it might have been a little bit overstated. Jeffrey Katzenberg, who, if you don't know, is not only a Hollywood executive, big-time Hollywood executive, he's the K in DreamWorks SKG. He says that Steven Spielberg has no desire to change the Academy rules to stop Netflix movies from being nominated. He was at the South by Southwest Festival this weekend, and he said, quote, I talked to Steven about this yesterday. I asked him very specifically, I don't have any skin in this game anymore. He said, I absolutely did not say that. He actually said nothing. So how did this happen? Here's what Jeffrey Katzenberg says, quote, what happened is a journalist was onto a story about this and had heard a rumor about Steven. They called a spokesperson to get a comment and honestly just twisted it around. 1, Steven didn't say that, and 2, he's not going to the Academy in April with some sort of plan, but he has not opined at all, nor has he aligned with some specific thing. So, on one hand, we have these reports that Steven Spielberg is ready to get the Academy to change their rules. On the other hand, here's Jeffrey Katzenberg saying, no, he's not. He doesn't have plans to do that whatsoever. I did go back to the original story, and basically where this all came from is a quote from an Amblin spokesperson who said that Steven Spielberg would be happy if others took up this cause in April at the Academy Governors meeting if this topic comes up, or when this topic comes up. And that's the genesis of where this all started.
Yeah.
On the other hand, in 2018, Steven Spielberg did say that, quote, fewer and fewer filmmakers are going to struggle to raise money or to compete at Sundance and possibly get one of the specialty labels to release their films theatrically, and more of them are going to let the SVOD businesses finance their films, maybe with the promise of a slight one-week theatrical window to qualify for awards. But in fact, once you commit to a television format, you are a TV movie. So Steven Spielberg has sort of come out against streaming services, but it sounds like, according to Jeffrey Katzenberg, he has no plans to push the Academy to change the rules. Guys, what do you think? Where's the truth in all this?
Well, my thing is it could go either way. I'm sure, like, it's just with anything. Like, when you're the OG in an industry and there's a new thing that makes it seem like it's way easier, which it is, and isn't necessarily a bad thing, but as someone who had to, like, go through certain hoops to get stuff made, you're going to be a little salty. I don't think that means you have to try and burn it down, but I think the 2018 comment makes more sense than the idea of him and all the OG directors marching down to the Academy with their guns out. But I do, like, I was with him on the 2018 quote, like, I like empathizing with him until that last, sentence, because I'm like, what qualifies as a TV movie? because in some cases a TV movie is a movie that just couldn't make it to cinemas, and that's the only distribution they got. You know, so it is there. I feel like most movies are shot to be movies, and so that was the only thing that bucked me. But that's just more of a personal thing. I think as far as this rumor goes, I think it is the rumor mill. I feel like it's a lot easy to like. I think one thing that, you know, and I'm not trying to fully jump into this convo, but one thing, you know, recent events in society has led is all forms of journalism has kind of been sensationalized. We've gotten into clickbaity territory, and, you know, just like it was said in Nightcrawler, if it bleeds, it leads. And so I think you are getting people fluffing up news and maybe like kind of reading in more to like something someone's saying that needs to be, and just to get something that'll get passed around. Because I mean, look at how much people are talking about this when Steven Spielberg's like, I didn't say it.
Here's the thing, though. I think if you went back to the early 70s and were like, Mr. Spielberg, we want to nominate Duel for Best Picture, he wouldn't be like, guys, I made a TV movie.
Yeah,
Let's back up here just a second. I think he would.
It was released theatrically in Europe. I think it's
Look, I don't want to put on my tinfoil hat here, but part of me does think he very much, like, look, his quote doesn't lie. His actual quote doesn't lie. He's not a fan of these things being compared to, say, you know, something like a big theatrical number. But part of me wonders, because he's been getting it hard for about a week since this came out, if this is a little bit of walking it back just a pinch. Like, guys, I never said I was going to do it.
There has been a backlash. Markeia, this is obviously, if you're a news writer, if you're running blogs and articles and whatever, this is a sexy story, obviously. Steven Spielberg versus the public. Yeah. I mean, that's really what it's been chalked up as. Or at least Steven Spielberg versus the Academy. Ava DuVernay tweeted and said, like, hey, you know, I hope that you're representing the interests of other filmmakers and not speaking for everyone. Obviously, she had a great success with 13th, which was a Netflix film that also came out in the theaters. What do you think, Markeia? Is it much ado about nothing? Is it somewhere in the middle?
I think that it's more than likely somewhere in the middle. I like Billy's take on it, because it's like, yes, this is a very sexy story. This has long legs on it, where it's just like, wow, you have this powerhouse of Steven Spielberg, you know, going after the small filmmaker, going after Netflix. It's like, yeah, of course that sounds great, but it doesn't really sound like him. Also, it seems a little bit off. Like, when it first came out, I was just like, wow, this dude's been, you know, eating at the VIP buffet for so long, he doesn't remember what it's like to be hungry. I mean, that's basically what's going on. And then it's like seeing this quote, though. And then I'm on board the iffy bus with it, where it's just like, what do you mean by TV movie, Mr. Spielberg? Because it's like, are we talking like Lifetime and Hallmark? Those are, you know, made for TV movies, and those have a certain flavor to them. I like to call them my personal trash movies because, you know, they're great. They're like junk food for me, and I think they're fantastic. Would I nominate them for awards? No. You know, so it's like, are you comparing that to, 13th, or are you comparing that to, was it the Mowgli movie, Andy Serkis's?
Right.
You know, are you comparing that because that had a limited theatrical release? Those aren't made for TV movies. Those are movies that you can stream at home on your TV.
Right.
And there's a big difference there. And then with things like Roma coming out, it's like, I mean, I do think there's a conversation to be had, because when you have something like Netflix that has like they have so much money that they can throw at everything. So it's like, will that inundate the market for the smaller filmmakers? Because I remember the original thing was because it's like you have to have a 1 week theatrical release in either New York or LA to qualify for award season. But with that, with Netflix, they're letting smaller filmmakers and more representation happen for behind the camera for this. So how is this a bad thing?
Yeah, I mean,
there's less risk on Netflix.
Anyone watches the show, they know that I am the one that's always talking about the preservation of the theatrical experience. I think you have to, but I think when you go to the Academy, and if you're going to open this, it's sort of like, for me, it feels like the popular Oscar in a way, in the sense that, like, if you're going to go to the Academy and get them to change the rules and say that, well, before it was just, like you said, 1 week theatrical release before the end of the year in New York or LA, you're eligible. Those are it's a very simple rule. Then if you want to add qualifications, then it's like, okay, if it has to be more than that, how many more screens? How many more locations? How much longer? Well, then what if it's a movie that isn't for Netflix but doesn't have the money to be released on?
Right.
Is it 500 screens? Is it 300? Is it 100? What if the movie can't? Then it's like the magician. You're just pulling a handkerchief out and there's no end to it.
Also for me too, like if we're gonna start doing these qualifications, to me, like the platform that movies are releasing on isn't the big problem to me. To me, the big problem is getting these Oscar bait movies. These movies that aren't so different, you just know that this is the type of stuff that gets the Academy going, and you drop it. Like I still have a bone to pick with Brooklyn. There's just that type of movie where it's like it's either going to be a period, a biopic, and it's going to drop just close enough to the Oscars so that anyone who matters is going to watch it right before, so it's the conversation. Like there's all these tactics like those that are being used to win awards, and we're worried about Netflix movies just dropping like at a normal time. It just happened that Roma just is so good that people are still talking about it. But you have these movies that are dropping a few months from the Oscars and just trying to get in that hashtag conversation. And it's just, and that to me is more of a quote unquote cheating than like someone putting in their time and getting a green light for a movie that most major studios don't want a green light. And I think that's the real, like if I can borrow that tinfoil hat, that's the real fear from all these older directors is you destroy the power dynamic if there's another way you can win awards and make movies that doesn't go through this old monolithic system. Like if you don't have to go to the big dogs to get your movie made, then what power do they have anymore? They can't control anything anymore. They can't like push the sales in certain directions. They can't push their top dog. They can't promise anyone that you'll be in all the movies because now you have a whole different sect of directors who doesn't have to listen to this bigwig at this like movie company.
You're like selling me right now. I'm just thinking the perfect biopic would be the friendship of George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, the king of the monolithic system, and the best friend who's like, I'm doing my own thing from now until forever. Because I truly wonder, like say what you want about the prequels, it's irrelevant, but I have a feeling if Lucas was still like actively making movies, he'd be all about shooting them digitally and releasing them like half a second after he was done on Netflix. Like without even watching it first, he'd be like, no, just put it up right away because I can.
Well, because Spielberg and Lucas also get grouped together. When people talk about the directors of the 70s, everyone always groups Spielberg and Lucas together. They could not have been, like Lucas was in like the Francis Ford Coppola camp of like, retire to Napa on your own and make your experimental film. It's self-financed, self-produced. It's very much the independent movement. And Spielberg was the guy that came up through working on the Universal lot and went through the more traditional route. He shot TV, he shot episodes of television, then he shot a TV movie, and then his, the Sugar Land Express was a studio film. His second movie was the huge blockbuster. And this idea, and everyone always kind of groups them together because they collaborated, but like they did not have the same theatrical experience. Like George Lucas was up in San Francisco scrapping and going broke and doing everything else and away from everything else. Spielberg was very much in the system. And I agree, like that would be a great, like just they're so intertwined, but their experiences could not have been more different. But because they both came up in the 70s, they're lumped together as like the same director. I will also say that there is a lot of goalpost moving happening right now around digital media and around the digital space. People don't know what to do with it. Like there was an organization that I wanted to join that said, like, if you're nominated for an award at the series level, then you can automatically be in this organization. And I'm like, oh, that's not the mafia or anything. Don't worry. And I'm like, it was like whatever. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And so like I emailed them and I'm like, hey, I read in your rules that if you're nominated for a series, I was like, we were nominated for an award for best short form or variety series. So, how do I go about it? And they're like, oh, yeah, no, not that kind of series.
No.
Like, I
not
see.
That kind of award.
A real series. Gotcha. But that's happening all over the place is people don't know how to adjust. Like you were saying, the monolith of this is entertainment and this is not entertainment. They don't know how to adjust and like what do you include and what do you not include. I know it's going to be an interesting story. We will continue to track this saga as it goes.
What happened?
As
Do you know what
technology
happened
continues.
specifically in April? Why they keep saying
Basically the Academy has a governors meeting in April, which is Spielberg is a governor for the directors branch. Each branch has their own representatives that are elected as governors, and they meet together. It's kind of like the Electoral College. They meet together to speak on behalf of everyone else. And so April, there's a big Academy governors meeting where they talk about rule changes and Academy business. And so that was the whole thing, was that Spielberg was going to go to this governors meeting in April and demand that the rules, even though no one ever said that the rules be changed to exclude Netflix films. And
wonder what the representation is like at that governor's meeting.
Oof, I have no
have a
idea.
guess.
Yeah.
I won't be there though.
Exactly. Nope. Guys, Suicide Squad 2, or The Suicide Squad, or whatever it's going to be called. James Gunn's Suicide Squad sequel, that's safe to say, seems to be taking a little bit more shape. When Will Smith left the sequel, there was a lot of question about whether or not there was somebody who would replace him, if Deadshot was going to be out of it. It looks like Idris Elba is now going to take over that part. And now this is via Slash Film and The Hollywood Reporter. It looks like we may know why they might be going with the same character but a different take. Early Suicide Squad 2 plot details that have been revealed say that Deadshot is a central figure in James Gunn's story, but that the story is drawing heavily from a classic run from the 1980s by John Ostrander and Kim Yale. Not the more recent film, sort of more geared toward the New 52, a more recent iteration of the Suicide Squad. It looks like James Gunn may be going back for more of a throwback look. And the Deadshot in that run is not the jokester that we may have expected from the first one. He was not the conflicted criminal struggling to raise his daughter that we saw in the first film. He had a death wish. He had suicidal tendencies, a child of abusive parents. Floyd and his brother Edward were drawn into a plot to assassinate their father by their mother, who had been paralyzed at their father's hands. He backed out at the last minute, but he accidentally fires a shot that kills his brother. So that awakens him to just kind of become a nihilist, not care about anything in life. Then later his mom contracts him to kill his dad. It gets really dark and crazy. And it just gets crazier. So one of the reasons why it seemed like they may have just slotted Will Smith out and Idris Elba in is that this is not the Deadshot that we met in the first film.
And I can see how, like, New Day Will Smith power of positivity is like, nah, I'm not doing this.
Yeah. If they go this direction, of course, the DC universe overall is moving more towards a less connected feel, but looking at Aquaman and Shazam coming up, Aquaman had a much lighter feel. The publicity materials for Shazam and the word going around is that it is a much lighter film. This seems like a darker film. Do you think, a lot of people have thought that maybe the DC movies now are going to go toward lighter? Do you guys think maybe it just means we're going to get a very varied sense of tones, but in a more disconnected universe?
I hope so. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I definitely think it's going to be more of a varied tone. I think the DCU got the note that people were telling them that maybe not so much super gritty, always Batman kind of feel to it, to where it's like, yeah, you can have a rompy, campy adventure underneath the sea with Aquaman, with actual fisher people in it, and then you can have a Wonder Woman existing in during a world war, but also Wonder Woman 84, where it's like Steve Trevor comes back, great, and then you can have Shazam, which is a little, it's good and kind of cheesy, but it's family friendly, and it's just it's so beautiful, and like in its own way, with the foster family and powers. And so, but yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean that we don't want to have a dark flavored movie. I mean, and if you're not going to have Suicide Squad, it's in the title. If that's not going to be your dark and gritty movie, then what is? Yeah.
Yeah.
It is funny because when I read this, I was like, man, the main character in Suicide Squad is suicidal? I don't know, guys. It seems like a misstep. But yes, now in context, maybe you're right. I don't know. Maybe this is... we've seen nothing official, really, from the Joker movie coming out. And maybe this will be like that, where this is in its own little pocket. I hope it's not... Especially now, if they are going to take this route, I hope, bless you, I hope this is not connected whatsoever to the other Suicide Squad movie.
Yeah.
Like, don't try to, like, bend over backwards to be like, here's a different part of Floyd that we didn't show you last time. This is also, like, way more interesting. Like, just start over. It's okay. We've given you, like, a half pass.
Yeah, Spider-Man got 2.
Yeah, I mean, Spider-Man, we've given Spider-Man a lot of second chances.
Yeah.
I kind of do hope, though, that means, probably not, but I hope that means Margot Robbie's not in this, so that, let's just start clean. Let's just start completely clean.
It would be a little bit weird if it was backtracking a bit with, like, his story, because he meets her for the first time in the Suicide Squad that we know. You know, the award-winning Suicide Squad.
Academy Award-winning Suicide Squad.
Suicide Squad.
That is true.
Hey,
that is 100%.
That's a real fact. That's a real fact in that sentence.
What's funny about it is I will always defend them winning that because I thought Croc was CGI, and when I found out I didn't, I was like, that's why they won the makeup.
I mean,
it was
Croc looked
gorgeous.
awesome.
It was gorgeous.
So I was like, yeah, that was the one thing they got right.
But doesn't it make you, like, almost even more mad? Because you're like, you guys, Croc was so cool. What were you doing with Hula Girl? Like, you could have done so many other cool things.
Oh, man.
You were capable.
Well, you're probably gonna get that in this, in in this Suicide sequel.
I hope so.
I mean, the darkness that they can go with this. I mean, I totally see why Will would be like, you know,
I'm happy, but this is. Everything y'all said, I think, is what I hope. Because my biggest gripe, anytime I try and, like, do my DCEU takedowns, I try and explain why. I think there's a lot of, there's a lot of spaces where people talk crap about movies online and just say they're bad. I think, it's the onus is on us to say why we think it's bad and how it could be good. And I was saying the Marvel formula. And the reason that you can have, like, comic book movies are hard. There's a reason it didn't work till now. And Marvel figured out that if you give the movie a genre besides superhero movie, you could have a good movie. You had, a heist movie. You had a royal taking of the throne movie in Black Panther. So I think that DC is finally catching on because Shazam feels like a coming-of-age, big-style film. Aquaman was campy and fun, but you can live that. And this one seems like it's trying to have its gritty darkness. And also, the part of that is, if you have a varied tone across your movies, movies like Suicide Squad pops more. Suicide Squad wasn't exciting because we've seen the grit, dirty superhero movie across DC. So this is just another one. But if you had the varying of, Superman being bright and triumphant, and then you have the darkness of Batman, and then you have just straight up, oh, you thought that was dark? Here's the Suicide Squad. That movie pops more in a roster of superhero movies.
Well, and when James Gunn was hired, many people, myself included, I think gravitated towards the idea that this would be, it makes sense because he did Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Guardians were, kind of a quippy team. So this is going to be kind of a quippy team movie, and not taking into consideration the fact that James Gunn is capable of darker darkness than anything that has ever.
Have you seen that Brightburn trailer?
The Brightburn Super is one of the darkest movies I have. I mean, that movie is effed up.
Yeah.
Not even just like ironically effed up. Like, it's just uncomfortable to watch at times. Maybe I think maybe a lot of people were head faked by the James Gunn hiring, connected with Guardians of the Galaxy. They think like, oh yeah, it's going to be a quippy team movie. Maybe we're going to get the other side, which is
extreme emotional depression.
Or maybe it'll be, an amalgamation of both, where it's like where we might get that perfect balance of dark humor because, we know that he can definitely give us that quippy fun, but dealing with some very dark things at the same time. I mean, think about it with, like, Guardians of the Galaxy too, son, versus father, and having to take that down and then figuring out his real father and what happens with that. I'm not going to do spoilers in case somebody hasn't seen it yet, but see it. Mary Poppins is a hell of a movie.
I mean, Suicide Squad, just in its conception, is a very dark idea. It's like, we're going to send out guys that maybe will die, doesn't really matter, but it's like Hunger Games. If you get out of it, we'll take 3 years off your 60 to life sentence. It's like, okay, that's not much of an upside. Like, that's a dark, almost funny how dark that concept is. I hope, like, James Gunn kind of has a sick sense of humor, like a dark sense of humor like that. I hope he zeroes in on that fact. They hinted at it a little bit in the first Suicide Squad. He's like, after all that, it's like I get 5 years off my life sentence. Great. But I hope that they really lean into, like, yeah, this is, like, missions that, like, the Justice League doesn't want to do. Like, no one wants to do this. It's a suicide mission.
Yeah, I hope they keep Viola Davis.
That's the one I would
her
keep.
Amanda Waller.
Yeah.
So yeah, her and Idris Elba would fit into this, especially this dark '80s run. Ooh. Yikes. Yeah, I think he definitely would. I mean, I'd love it if he brought a little bit of Luther or a little bit of The Wire into a Deadshot, and we see his Deadshot that way.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I'm excited. We'll see what happens as it progresses. I'm sure we'll be getting breathless updates from the set for the next 2 years.
Right here on SJU.
Yes, exactly. One filmmaker, though, that is definitely known for quippiness, brightness, strange, bizarre things is Taika Waititi. And he has been announced as being on board with an adaptation of another weird, very odd filmmaker's work. Thor Ragnarok filmmaker Taika Waititi has come aboard Time Bandits, which is the TV series adaptation of Terry Gilliam's movie, which is being developed at Apple. Apple bought the rights to the Time Bandits, which came out in 1981, last summer. Taika Waititi is going to co-write and direct the pilot for the potential series. So this isn't necessarily going to go full the series, but he's going to develop the pilot for the potential series. Time Bandits, Terry Gilliam, already an odd mixture. If you don't know Time Bandits, and to be honest, I don't know. I haven't seen Time Bandits. Billy, we were just talking about it, also has not seen Time Bandits. So I'm going into this a little blind. I think I'm going to have to catch up.
I've seen Time Bandits.
Markeia, can you give us as the Time Bandits expert at the table?
Oh man,
what's the snapshot
to describe Time Bandits? Okay. All right, so you're familiar with Terry Gilliam's Monty Python work, where you have like those little cuts where it'd be like, oh, they're in the boardroom and the guy's fed up and he just dives out the window, and then there's a pirate ship there, and then there's a whole other thing continuing on. Time Bandits is that, but not. It has a cast of little people that are the Time Bandits, and the map that they have is supposed to like transcend through like time and space. They take it feels like they kind of kidnap this 11-year-old to go along with them, and they're working for the bad guy all throughout the time, but they come into their own type of humanity while they're doing it. It does not bode well for everybody. Don't expect for everybody to make it out to the end. But it is just the costumes alone and like the actual tone of it. I mean, this is the movie to get high and watch, because you'll feel high anyway when you're watching
might
it.
as well.
Yeah. But it's literally like one of those slices of like 80s sci-fi fantasy that is, you're like, oh yeah, that it used to be like that.
Yeah.
That is what they did.
The Labyrinth era.
Yeah. It exists like in its own little pocket universe, and like I didn't know how much I wanted Taika Waititi to take this on until, I sat down today and learned about this. Was like, yeah, I cannot imagine any other director seeing that and being like, oh, yeah, I can do that. I'll do that in my way, kind of a thing. But yeah, he is a perfect match for that.
It's also interesting, too. It seems like Taika is taking a lot of IP and doing the TV version. Because he's doing Mandalorian, or at least one. He's doing What We Do in the Shadows for effects. He's doing
his own.
this. That was his own. But still, like, that's kind of interesting. I'm more interested, like, okay, so Apple snapped up the rights to this, which is maybe a little, like, an esoteric IP to, like, quickly snag. It's like, based on this, and like I think like the Reese Witherspoon show that they have, and a couple other Jennifer Aniston, it's like, what is Apple's streaming? Like, what is their identity?
I don't know what it is, but I've heard from a few folks working on certain aspects that they're sparing no expense. So like hearing them doing Time Bandits, I'm like, oh, this is gonna probably look good, because they're really showing out
Well, there's been reports, whether they turn out to be true or not, but there's been reports that Apple's approach to its streaming business is not going to be a subscription-based approach, that it's going to be a product-based approach, meaning if you have Apple TV, if you have iOS, whatever, that you'll be able to access their programming. So they're not so much trying to get people to subscribe to their service for $10 a month. They're trying to get people to buy their products to watch their shows. Do you think that affects the decision?
Oh, man. I think so because, holy crap. Okay, now you're going to get me talking. I'm going to just think, too, because I still need to get work. But, one thing I've learned working in this industry as long as I have is a lot of shows, it kind of is determined how much money you can make. Like everyone was freaking out about Sonic wearing Nikes, and it's like that's probably one of the only ways Sonic got greenlit. Is like how is this going to make money if you can't outright basically guarantee this is going to be a smash. And I think that's for every platform, especially, a lot of us have experience with like newer platforms, and they just got money from investors, but how are they going to get new money? That's an interesting point in the fact that Apple doesn't make its money from this. It's going to release another iPhone when their streaming platform drops and make billions of dollars. They have no need for that. All they want to do is make it enticing to own their products. So that's going to have a whole different approach to the type of shows that they greenlight, because there's no need to follow any standard other than, does this seem like something that people will want to watch? And I think that's really going to change the game for them. It's really got me interested because I'm probably going to have an Apple TV anyway, and it's going to make a bigger breadth of new users when there's no pay hurdle. You can just, if you have it, you have it. And I know a lot of folks with Apple TV. I know a lot of folks on the fence about Apple TV. And this just might be the thing that gets them to jump over.
No, it's interesting that you say that, Dan, because I read a report a couple months back, and again, this was all speculation. But they were gearing up to release iTunes as an app on Samsung smart TVs. Now, if that's the case, look, it could just be for any number of reasons having nothing to do with Apple TV, but a lot of people were saying at the time this could be Apple's strategy for getting it out there, because at this point we know Apple's in the game, but we have no idea how they're even launching this thing. I tend to that's strange that they would develop an app if they're not going to use it.
I mean, these are just reports,
right? Of course, there's nothing confirmed, but I do think it's a smarter play for them, and it's more on brand for them to keep it exclusive to their hardware.
Or they do a hybrid model where you have, that's the thing about Apple's, they have distribution, they have everything. If you own an Apple device, you get it for free.
Exactly.
You can watch it for free. But they also own iTunes, so they can also put Time Bandits out. You can buy it for $3 an episode, just like they do every other TV show.
I mean,
it's kind of like I really love this business model though, because think about it. They don't have to worry about having constant original content like they do with Netflix. They don't have to worry about buying everything up like Disney, which, I think Marvel Netflix is going to end up being Marvel Hulu somewhere down the line. But it's like they don't have to worry about that. All they have to worry about is attracting big names and having tent poles. So yes, you have a snarky, fantastical time space pirate adventure with Taika Waititi. Yes, you have the Reese Witherspoon show. It's like, because if you're trying to sell people a product and be like, hey, thanks for buying this TV. Here's this new television series that comes along with it that you can watch right now after you plug it in. It's like, that makes sense.
Not to mention the FOMO. Like, if you have, this is not a true number at all, but just for the sake of conversation, 50% of people have Apple device. That's 50% of people who are going to be on Twitter making memes, making jokes, inside jokes about the show. So the other 50% are going to be like, I got to buy this and know what they're talking about. Like, I think we have to talk about Bird Box. The only reason that movie was successful was because of Twitter. Was the memes. It was, and everyone's like, I don't get it. It's not that good. It was like, it's a conversational concept. Like, the movie doesn't have to be that good because the concept of the movie is more fun to talk about. And we've all watched those movies where, like, the movie itself, you're left like, but the moment someone talks to you about it, you're just talking about it for hours, and you're like, did we actually like that movie?
Purge.
Yeah.
I felt that way about Napoleon Dynamite, which was I finally saw, like, all my friends in college. I went Napoleon Dynamite, Napoleon. So I went and saw it. And I was just like, okay, but then the references, because they're like gold, they're like currency that you trade with your friends. Well, there you go. Yeah. Maybe that's what Apple's going for. We'll find out. The streaming wars continue. I agree. I think it could be an interesting business approach, but things change, and the show changes in that it's over, and I can't transition things. I'm not a segue master. I leave that to Roth and Joe. That is our show for today. What do you guys think? What do you guys think about Steven Spielberg? What do you think about Apple? What do you think about Suicide Squad 2? Let us know in the comments below, as always. And I will be back later today with a co-host, somebody, whoever's around, to talk about Captain Marvel's box office breakdown, where it stands in the MCU, where it might go from here. Markeia McCarty, thank you for joining us today. Anything you want to plug? Where can people find you?
Sure. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Markeia McCarty. If you have a DC Universe, I'm on DC Daily, Monday through Friday. We do it's comics, movies, TVs, all in the DC Universe. And we are one of the panels that I'm on is Doom Patrol. If you haven't watched Doom Patrol, I do strongly recommend. It's so fun. You don't have to know the comics to absolutely love it. It's dark as fuck, but it's so funny and snarky at the same time. So I'm just so excited about it. I like Doom Patrol.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us today. If Nwadawe, where can people find you?
You can find me at If Nwadawe on Twitter and Instagram. I'm on Twitch, IfDeez, IFDEEZ. Come and hang out. And, if you have an Amazon Prime account and you don't really use Twitch, connect it to your Twitch account. Give me one of them free Twitch Prime subs. You get one, so I don't want you to think you have a lot.
Everyone gets one.
Everyone gets one. You can give it to me.
Yep.
Billy.
Yep, you can find me at my desk.
Yeah,
I have a call with the team in the Ukraine in a little bit. So
in the Ukraine?
Yeah, we're working on some cool stuff. I can't wait to be able to show everyone down the pipeline.
Should be fun. And most of all, thank you for watching. JT in the booth, Ryan doing the socials, David Pac-Man doing the socials. But really you for watching, because otherwise we wouldn't have a job. Yeah. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with SJU with some co-hosts. Well, it's like a grab bag every day.
Yeah.
We'll find out. Thanks for watching. See you later.